I knew something was wrong the moment she walked past me without a glance, moving with that detached, distracted stiffness that had somehow become her default posture around me. Dinner was still warm on the table, 2 glasses poured, a soft light filling the kitchen the way I used to think made our home feel safe. Yet she didn't even look at it, or at me. She tossed her keys into the ceramic bowl by the door, exhaled sharply through her nose, and muttered the same sentence she had repeated so many nights in a row that I had begun to feel ridiculous for even hoping. "I'm too tired tonight." She didn't say it unkindly. That was the part that bothered me most. There was no irritation, no argument, no visible struggle. Just a practiced line delivered with the bland efficiency of someone switching off a light. I tried to tell myself she meant nothing by it, that people go through phases and slumps and stress, but the hollow inside me ached in a way that made logic useless. I missed her. Not just sex, though the lack of intimacy was starting to scrape at my confidence, but the closeness, the shared breath, the warmth of knowing I was wanted by the one person who promised the world to me. Every time she walked away from me like this, something inside me chipped just a little bit more, like an old sculpture being worn down by hands that no longer cared for its shape. The strange thing was that her sister seemed to notice this erosion before I could admit it to myself. Maya had been staying with us for 2 weeks, claiming she needed a break from her own life, though she never really explained what that meant. She had this way of observing things quietly, almost too quietly, as if she was collecting puzzle pieces none of us realized we were dropping. While my wife walked down the hallway toward the bedroom she no longer let me touch her in, I felt Maya's eyes on me from across the room. She was sitting on the couch, legs folded under her, scrolling through something on her phone. But when she lifted her gaze, the look wasn't casual. It was measuring, almost sympathetic, but with a sharpness behind it I couldn't place. I didn't want her noticing the cracks in my marriage before I fully understood them myself, so I looked away. But even then, the back of my neck tingled with the sense that she was still studying me, not in a judgmental way, but more like someone watching a knot tighten slowly until it finally snaps. She didn't say anything, and I wasn't about to start a conversation that would make me sound like a lonely teenager rejected before prom night. So I washed the dishes I had hoped we'd share, wiped down the counter, and told myself the exhaustion in her eyes meant something temporary, something solvable. But that night, lying beside her in the dim room while she scrolled on her phone as if I wasn't even there, I felt the disconnect more vividly than ever. The sheets between us felt like a barrier, a cold line dividing two people who once couldn't go a day without touching each other. She turned away from me, screen glow painting the back of her shoulders in pale blue. I tried to say something gentle, something inviting, but the words died in my throat when she sighed and murmured, "Not tonight, please. I'm tired." There was something different in her tone this time, an impatience hidden beneath the softness, like she was weary of even pretending the excuse still mattered. I stayed awake afterward, staring at the ceiling, my mind drifting through every memory where she used to reach for me first, where her laugh filled the space between us, where she would pull me closer just to breathe against my neck. That woman felt distant, or gone, and somehow, the idea that she didn't miss me the way I missed her hurt more than anything else. When I finally got up to get a glass of water, I noticed a dim light coming from the living room. Maya was there, sitting by the window, hugging her knees loosely to her chest. She turned her head slowly when she heard me, and for a moment, I expected her to tease me for wandering the house like a ghost. But she didn't. Her expression was unreadable, lips parted slightly as if she had been waiting. "You okay?" I whispered. Her eyes lingered on me in a way that made the air feel heavier. "Are you?" The question wasn't casual. It felt like she already knew the answer. I didn't reply. I couldn't. She stood up, walked toward me barefoot, her steps soft on the hardwood floor, stopping close enough that I could see the faint shimmer in her eyes. There was tension in the silence. Not seductive, not innocent. Something more complex, layered with unspoken truths I didn't yet understand. Then, with a slow, deliberate breath, she leaned just close enough that her voice reached only me, warm and quiet in the dark. So I'm not. For a moment after she whispered those words, I couldn't move. It wasn't even the content of what Maya said that froze me. It was the tone. Soft, deliberate, almost dangerously calm, like she'd been holding it in for days and finally decided to let it slip. The house was silent around us, the kind of silence that magnifies every small sound, every breath, every shift of weight. I could hear her inhale, slow and steady, as if she was giving me time to react. Yet I couldn't muster a single coherent thought. My wife was asleep in the other room, too tired for me again, and here was her sister standing inches away, her presence electric in the dim hallway, telling me she wasn't tired at all. It should have sounded like an invitation, but something deeper flickered beneath it, something that hinted at meaning far beyond simple attraction. When I finally stepped back, trying to regain some sense of balance, Maya didn't chase after me or try to close the distance. She simply watched me with that same unreadable expression, her arms loosely folded, like she'd expected my confusion. I managed to whisper something about needing water, desperate for an exit from the moment before it swallowed me whole. She nodded once, slowly, and walked past me toward the couch, leaving a trail of tension in her wake that lingered long after she sat down again. As I filled my glass at the kitchen sink, my hands trembled slightly. I felt ridiculous for reacting like a teenager. But the truth was, nothing about the situation felt simple. It wasn't just the inappropriate intimacy of the whisper. It was the context, the weight behind it. My wife's rejection, the distance between us, the way Maya had been watching her for days with increasing intensity, like she was waiting for cracks to widen. I couldn't shake the feeling that Maya's words weren't merely about being awake or tired. They were a signal, a test, a warning, something layered. I went back to bed, but sleep didn't come. My wife mumbled something in her half-conscious state and turned away again, leaving me with the same cold space separating us physically and emotionally. I lay there replaying the whisper in my mind again and again, trying to decode it. So I'm not tired, not distant, not uninterested, or not blind. The ambiguity gnawed at me until dawn painted the room with pale light. The next morning, my wife acted as though nothing had happened the night before. She ate breakfast distractedly, scrolling through her phone, barely responding when I talked about simple things, work, errands, even weekend plans we'd once made with excitement. She hummed in vague acknowledgement, not bothering to look up. Maya, on the other hand, sat across from me with a quiet alertness that made it feel like I was the only person in the room she was paying attention to. Every time my wife brushed me off with a non-answer, Maya's gaze sharpened for a fraction of a second, as if she was silently cataloging the way my wife treated me. When my wife left for work, Maya lingered in the kitchen, rinsing her mug slowly. I tried to avoid eye contact, but she didn't let me. "About last night," she said, her voice steady but not cold. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." "You didn't," I lied, because admitting the truth felt like crossing a boundary I wasn't ready for. She raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. I shouldn't have said it that way, but I also didn't say it accidentally. She turned off the faucet, dried her hands, and leaned back against the counter, studying me with a focus that made my skin buzz. "You know your wife hasn't been honest with you, right?" The words hit harder than I expected. For a second, I wondered if she meant last night, or the last month, or something far bigger. I forced myself to keep my voice even. "What are you talking about?" Maya bit the inside of her cheek, thinking through how much she wanted to reveal. "She hasn't been tired. That's not what this is." She stepped closer, but not seductively, more like someone delivering bad news. "She's lying to you, and not just about this." I felt my pulse quicken. "If you know something, then say it plainly." Her eyes softened, but the edge in her voice didn't disappear. "I want to, but you won't believe me yet. You're still trying to convince yourself she's just busy or stressed or something safe." She sighed and brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm not trying to cause trouble. I'm trying to get you to see what's right in front of you." I swallowed hard, fighting the instinct to defend my wife, even though part of me knew Maya wasn't wrong. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Why now?" Her expression shifted. Something vulnerable flickered for a second before she hit it. "Because you deserve to know the truth. And because," her voice lowered, almost reluctantly, "because she's not the only one who's been watching you." Her admission sent a current through me, an uneasy mixture of guilt and attraction. She wasn't flirting recklessly. Her tone was too deliberate for that. She was pushing me toward something. Not temptation, but revelation. That should have made it easier to ignore the spark between us, yet it only heightened it. The tension in the room wrapped around us, thick and undeniable, but still restrained, balanced on a line neither of us wanted to cross. Before I could respond, Maya turned away, grabbing her jacket from the chair. "I'll tell you more when you're ready to hear it," she said quietly. Then she hesitated at the doorway, looked over her shoulder, and added one last sentence that lingered long after she left the room. "You felt it last night, didn't you? The truth behind what I said." She wasn't wrong. I had felt it. I just didn't know how much of my world it was about to unravel. I kept replaying Maya's words long after she left the kitchen, trying to find some angle where they made sense without implying something was deeply wrong in my marriage. But no matter how many excuses I created, none of them could cover the growing unease that had already taken root inside me. I had been blaming work stress, routine fatigue, and the natural dulling of long-term intimacy, but suddenly those explanations felt like cheap decorations over a crack in the wall. It was as if Maya had peeled back a corner of the wallpaper, revealing something fractured underneath, something I had been too afraid to examine. Over the next few days, patterns I'd brushed off before began to stand out like bright warning signs. My wife started going to bed even earlier, always with her phone in her hand, always turning away from me before I even had the chance to reach for her. Her smiles, when they happened, felt thin and practiced, the kind you give a stranger you want to end a conversation with quickly. And then there were her late-night outings. At first I'd assumed they were spontaneous visits to her sister, or a quick drive to clear her mind, but she had never been the type to leave the house after 10 unless something was wrong. Now she left almost every night, always claiming errands, always giving vague answers, always brushing off any follow-up question. The distance between us wasn't growing anymore. It had already grown, and I was standing at the edge of it, unsure when the bridge back to her had vanished. Maya watched these shifts with the same attentive stillness she'd shown since the night of the whisper. She didn't say anything, but every time my wife grabbed her purse and hurried out the door, Maya's gaze flickered to me, as if asking silently whether I was ready to see what she had been trying to warn me about. Her presence made everything heavier, because she wasn't wrong, but acknowledging that meant confronting a truth I wasn't ready for. One evening, while my wife was getting ready to leave again, Maya sat on the arm of the couch with her hair falling over one shoulder, looking like she was debating whether she had the right to intervene. My wife passed through the living room without acknowledging either of us, tugging on her coat and muttering something about needing to pick up a few things. Maya's eyebrows knitted together, and she watched her sister more closely than I had ever seen anyone watch another person. The moment the front door closed, Maya exhaled sharply. "Does she tell you where she goes?" she asked, her tone softer than her expression. "Errands," I said, though the word sounded unconvincing even to my own ears. "Groceries, pharmacy. She mentioned a friend once." Maya shook her head slowly, like she'd already expected the answer. "She's not visiting a friend, and she's not running errands either." She paused, studying my reaction. "She's not living the same life you think she is." I wanted to ask her what she meant, but something inside me held back. Not because I didn't want to know, but because part of me feared confirming a suspicion that had been forming in the back of my mind, the suspicion that this wasn't just distance, it was deception. Hours later, when my wife still hadn't come back, I paced the hallway restlessly. Passing the bedroom, I noticed her closet door was slightly open. That alone wasn't unusual. She was always in a rush, but something about the sliver of darkness inside the closet pulled at me, like a tug on a thread. Against my better judgment, I stepped inside. Her side of the closet looked the same as always, organized, color-coordinated, perfumed faintly with the floral scent she wore. But when I looked down, behind a stack of neatly placed shoeboxes, something metallic reflected the light. A small lock, attached to a plain black case. At first, I didn't intend to touch it. I told myself I was just curious, just noticing. But the more I stared at the locked box, the stronger the unease grew inside me. My wife wasn't the type to hide things, at least not before. She used to be open to the point of oversharing, telling me everything from her daily frustrations to the most insignificant details of her schedule. This wasn't her, or maybe the person I thought I knew had already vanished long before I realized. My hand moved on its own. I pulled the shoeboxes aside and lifted the locked case into the light. It wasn't heavy, but the cold metal lock made it feel ominous, like it contained something that shouldn't be found. I shook it slightly. There was no rattle, no sound at all. Whatever was inside was packed tightly. Behind me, a soft voice broke the stillness. "You found it." I nearly dropped the box as I spun around. Maya stood in the doorway, arms crossed lightly, her gaze fixed on the object in my hands. She didn't look surprised. She looked resigned, as if she'd been waiting for this moment. "How did you—" I began. "She hides everything in the same place," Maya said, stepping into the closet with slow, careful movements. "She always has. My parents used to say she was secretive even as a kid." She studied my face, her eyes gentle but serious. "You weren't meant to find that, but I'm glad you did." My chest tightened. "What's inside?" Maya hesitated, and for the first time since she'd started hinting at deeper problems, she looked genuinely conflicted, vulnerable even. "If I tell you now, you'll think I'm lying," she murmured. "It's better if you open it yourself, but not tonight." She placed a hand on my wrist, the brief contact sending a strange warmth through me. "You're not ready for what's in there." Her touch lingered a moment too long, and when she finally stepped back, there was something in her eyes that felt both dangerous and protective. "Keep it hidden from her," she whispered, "and from now on, don't ignore the patterns." The closet felt smaller suddenly, like the walls were inching closer, pressing in on us, on the secrets, on the tension neither of us dared to fully name. As I slipped the locked box into the bottom drawer of my nightstand, a cold certainty settled in my stomach. Something in my marriage was unraveling, and Maya knew exactly how deep the threads ran. It's strange how a single object can alter the entire atmosphere of a home. Ever since I found the locked box, nothing felt normal. Not the routine, not the silence, not even the way the walls seemed to hold sound differently. My wife moved through the house like someone playing a role, hitting her marks, delivering her lines, never allowing anything real to slip through. But now, every gesture she made carried a second meaning. Every smile felt suspicious. Every "I'll be back soon" echoed with the weight of hidden truth. She didn't know I had discovered the box, but even that ignorance felt dangerous, like I was walking around with a loaded secret in my pocket. Maya, on the other hand, seemed almost relieved that I had found it, as though she had been waiting for me to stumble upon the evidence she couldn't force in front of me. She watched me closely over the next 2 days, not with flirtation or provocation, but with a quiet, steady concern that made me realize her motives weren't as simple as attraction or mischief. There was something protective in her presence, something that suggested she knew far more about my wife's life than she'd dared to reveal. On the third night, when my wife once again announced she was running out for a few things, Maya's expression flickered with frustration, sharp enough to break through her usual calm. She waited until the front door clicked shut before turning toward me, arms crossed, leaning against the hallway wall as if she'd finally made a decision she had been resisting. "You can't keep pretending this is nothing," she said quietly. I closed the living room curtain, my hands heavier than they should have been. "I'm not pretending. I'm trying to understand before I accuse her of something I can't prove." Maya let out a soft, humorless laugh. You don't need proof. You need clarity. I looked at her, and for the first time, she didn't avoid my eyes. She held my gaze with a seriousness that made the room feel smaller, like we were standing on the edge of a truth neither of us could walk away from once spoken. Maya, I said, trying to steady my voice, just tell me what you know. She walked toward me slowly, almost hesitantly, as if closing the distance was something that carried consequences. When she stopped in front of me, she wasn't close enough to be inappropriate, but she was close enough that I could see the faint trembling in her hands. That alone unsettled me. Maya wasn't the type to show nerves. Her confidence was quiet but solid, until now. She's hiding something dangerous, she whispered. Not just cheating, not just lying, something bigger. My throat tightened. Then tell me what it is. I will, she said, eyes softening with something like sadness. But first you need to understand why I'm even telling you in the first place. She stepped back and sat on the arm of the couch, clasping her hands together as though bracing for impact. I followed her, sitting across from her, the space between us charged with unspoken tension. Not the kind born from attraction, though that current existed beneath everything, but the tension of two people circling a wound, knowing it will hurt to open it. I'm not trying to steal you from her, she began, her voice low but steady. I know it might look that way. I know the whisper that night probably confused you. But I didn't say it to seduce you. She paused, searching my face for any sign of disbelief. I said it because you needed to hear something honest. Because she isn't giving you honesty anymore. I leaned forward slightly, the gravity of her words pulling me in. Then what are you trying to do, Maya? She exhaled sharply, the sound carrying more emotion than she likely intended. I'm trying to protect you. The words landed heavily between us. Protective wasn't a word I associated with her, not because she was incapable of it, but because we had never been close enough for her to feel any responsibility for my well-being. Yet the look in her eyes now was unmistakably sincere. Protect me from what? I asked. She hesitated, eyes drifting toward the hallway where my wife usually stormed through with her purse and excuses. From her, she whispered. From what she's planning. From what she's already done. My pulse hammered in my chest. What do you know, Maya? Her gaze flicked toward me again, and this time she didn't look away. She's not who you think she is, and the secrets she's keeping, they're not harmless. You're not the first person she's pushed away like this. I felt a chill run through me. You're saying she's done this before? To someone else? To more than one person, Maya said, and not just emotionally. My family has been worried about her for years. They think she's manipulative. They think she's dangerous. They think she targets people. The word targets made the room feel colder. And you? I asked quietly. What do you think? Maya's throat bobbed as she swallowed. I think you're in the middle of something she's constructing, something she doesn't want you to see. And I'm afraid of what happens if you stay blind to it. The way she said it left no room for misinterpretation. It wasn't jealousy driving her. It wasn't attraction. It was fear. And there's more, she added, her tone shifting again, quieter, almost reluctant. I know I shouldn't say this, not now, but I'm also not neutral in this. I'm not just an observer. She curled her fingers into her palms, her knuckles whitening. I'm attracted to you. I have been since before all this started. And I hate that it complicates everything, but it doesn't change the truth. My breath caught in my chest. The confession wasn't loud or dramatic, but it twisted the air between us in an instant. Maya lifted her gaze to mine, her eyes filled with something raw and conflicted. I'm telling you this not to tempt you, she said softly, but because you need to know my motives before we take another step. You deserve transparency, even if my feelings complicate it. Her voice trembled just slightly as she added, and in the end, my attraction to you is the least dangerous part of this situation. Her words lingered, heavy and unavoidable, and for the first time, I realized how deep the danger truly ran. I should have expected that nothing Maya revealed would be straightforward. Everything about her, her timing, her observations, her silences, had been deliberate from the beginning. But even knowing that, I wasn't prepared for how deeply the truth would cut. Her confession of attraction still lingered in the back of my mind like a muted flame, warm enough to feel but not bright enough to blind me to the shadows she warned about. And yet, I couldn't shake the uneasy mixture of guilt and curiosity that accompanied it. The tension between us wasn't imagined. She acknowledged that herself. But it wasn't the core of what she wanted to tell me. The seriousness in her eyes made it clear that whatever was coming next would dismantle whatever illusions I still held about my wife, about our marriage, and even about Maya. She didn't speak immediately after her confession. She let the silence settle between us, allowing me a moment to absorb the weight of what she'd said. Then, as though bracing herself, she shifted her posture and sat up straighter, her hands clasped together tightly in her lap, her knuckles white. When she finally looked at me again, something had changed in her expression. The vulnerability was still there, but now it was layered with a determined sadness, like someone who knew the truth would hurt, but also believed there was no turning back once spoken. "You deserve the full story," she said quietly, "even if it makes you hate me for a moment." My stomach tightened. Why would I hate you? Because I haven't been completely honest with you. She dropped her gaze to her hands. Not about why I'm here. Not about why I've been watching her. Not about what I came for in the first place. I felt a slow, cold realization beginning to form, though I didn't know its shape yet. "Maya, what are you saying?" She lifted her head, inhaling deeply as if preparing to tear open something sealed. "I didn't come here just to take a break from my life. I didn't come here randomly. I came because our family asked me to, because we needed to know what she was doing to you." I blinked, trying to make sense of it. Doing to me? Yes. Her voice softened, but the tremor underneath it made each word heavier. Because my sister has a pattern, a long one. She gets into relationships she can benefit from. She manipulates affection, money, loyalty, whatever she needs. And when she's done, she leaves without warning, taking whatever she can carry from the wreckage. For a moment, the world felt distant, like I was hearing underwater. "You think she's using me?" "I know she is," Maya said firmly. "And I know you don't want to believe that, because you're a good man. Good people assume others are too. But she's not. And we were afraid of what she was planning next." I leaned back, heart pounding, trying to process the pieces she was handing me. "So you came here to investigate her?" "Yes." She closed her eyes briefly, ashamed. "I didn't want to at first. It felt wrong, spying on my own sister. But we couldn't ignore the signs anymore. The secrecy, the money she was moving, the lies she was telling the family. She's been hiding things from all of us for years. And then she married you so fast. Too fast. None of us understood why." My mouth went dry. "You think she married me for money?" "For what she could get out of you," Maya corrected softly. "Money, stability, a name to attach herself to. Someone dependable, someone trusting, someone who wouldn't question her late nights or her changing behavior." The realization hit me like a punch. I wasn't naive. I'd seen the distance, the excuses, the coldness that wasn't there in the beginning, but hearing it laid out with this clarity made everything inside me twist painfully. "And me?" I asked, voice low. "What was your role?" Her shoulders sank with shame. "I was supposed to watch her, document what she was doing, make sure you weren't going to end up like the others. And when the time came, I was supposed to gather enough information to confront her and make her stop." The room felt suddenly smaller, the air thick. "So you weren't here to help me," I said quietly. "You were here because I was a project." Maya's eyes filled with something raw. "At first," she admitted. "I won't lie about that. But things changed. I changed. She leaned forward slightly, her voice trembling. I saw how she treated you, how she dismissed you, how she shut you out. You weren't the manipulative type she usually preyed on. You were good to her. Too good. And watching her take advantage of that made something inside me snap. Her breath caught, and she looked away for a second, ashamed. That's when I stopped just observing. I started caring. There it was, the complicated truth she dreaded telling me. She hadn't approached me because she was drawn to me. She had been placed here, assigned, embedded inside my home as a quiet investigator into my own marriage. Every lingering look, every long silence, every question, it all had a second layer. Her attraction came later, tangled in guilt. And the whisper? I asked, my voice barely audible. Was that part of the observation? No, she said instantly, shaking her head. That was the moment I stopped being neutral. The moment I couldn't watch her lie to you anymore. The moment I realized you needed to hear something true, even if it came from the wrong person. Silence pressed down on us like a weight. Maya's eyes shimmered with emotion as she whispered, I came here to investigate her, but I stayed because I cared about you. Part of me wanted to walk away. Part of me wanted to demand answers from my wife. But another part, a quieter, more dangerous part, understood the truth behind Maya's confession. She wasn't the threat. She was the warning. I didn't touch the box again for 2 days. Every time I opened the nightstand drawer and saw the small black case staring up at me like a sealed wound, a cold pulse went through my chest. Maya had told me not to open it yet, and though a part of me hated how much power that warning held, I couldn't shake the instinctive sense that she was right, that inside that box was something final, something that would sever whatever thread of denial I'd been clinging to about my wife, about our life, about the version of my marriage I still tried to protect in my mind. My wife continued her nightly disappearances, each one preceded by a flimsy excuse she barely bothered to deliver with sincerity anymore. Watching her rush out the door had started to feel like watching an actor leave the stage to switch costumes. Too practiced, too rehearsed, too detached. She didn't even try to hide her indifference now. She simply slipped through the house like a passing shadow, touching nothing, connecting to no one. And each time the door closed behind her, it felt as if she was erasing another piece of the life we once shared. Maya stayed quiet about the box. She didn't press me, didn't ask if I had opened it. But she watched me, not with judgment, but with the steady patience of someone waiting for a wound to burst open on its own. The dynamic between us changed subtly after her confession. There was no flirtation, no inappropriate closeness, yet something in the air between us had warmed. Not romantically, not yet. More like two people bound together by the same storm, forced into an intimacy created by circumstance rather than desire. She gave me space, but never too much. She hovered, close enough to support me, distant enough to avoid crossing a line we both recognized as dangerous. On the third night, I sat in bed long after my wife had left again. The house hummed with its usual evening quiet, but I felt the silence differently now, charged, waiting. My fingertips brushed the drawer, hovering over the handle. I don't know what finally pushed me to open it. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was fear. Or maybe it was the realization that the truth, no matter how brutal, was better than this slow suffocation of doubt. I pulled the box out and set it on the bed beside me. The lock glimmered faintly under the lamp. I tilted the case, checking for weak points, and that's when I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A faint scratch near the hinge, like someone had forced it open once before. My pulse quickened. I reached for my keys, testing each one at random, knowing it was pointless, but needing to try. None fit. The door creaked open softly. I looked up sharply, expecting my wife, but Maya stood there instead, her expression a mixture of resolve and dread. She closed the door behind her quietly and approached the bed, stopping on the opposite side of the box. "You're ready," she said. It wasn't a question. I nodded, my throat tight. Without another word, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small silver key. My eyes widened. "You had the key this whole time?" I asked, shock cutting through my tension. "It was my grandmother's," she said, her gaze fixed on the lock. "She gave it to me years ago, and then my sister stole it. She used it as a template to make locks like this." Her voice lowered. "All of her secret boxes use the same pattern." The key slid in smoothly. The click echoed like a gunshot in the quiet room. I swallowed hard as Maya gently lifted the lid. For a second, all I saw was darkness. Then she tilted the box toward me. Inside were 3 items. The first was a stack of prepaid phones, 5 of them, each one sleek and unused looking. My stomach twisted. My wife never needed burner phones. She barely liked using her regular one around me. The second item was a bundle of documents clipped together with a metal binder. I reached for them with shaking hands. At first glance, they looked official. Government documents, financial papers, applications. But as I scanned the pages, my breath caught in my throat. Different names, different addresses, different signatures, all in her handwriting. Some pages had my last name attached to different first names, like she had planned multiple versions of herself. The third item made my chest constrict. A photograph. A man I didn't recognize. Tall, sharply dressed, smiling at something off camera. The picture wasn't old. It looked recent enough that the date printed on the back made my blood run cold. It had been taken just 2 weeks earlier, around the time she'd started rejecting me with that cool, distant tone. My hands trembled as I held the photo. "Who is he?" Maya exhaled slowly, her voice trembling in a way I'd never heard from her. "Someone she's been seeing. Someone who thinks he's the only one." I stared at the picture, my mind blank with disbelief. "How long?" "I don't know," Maya admitted. "But it's not just an affair. It's worse." I looked up sharply. "What do you mean, worse?" She reached into the box, pulling out a final folded paper tucked under the binder clip. "This," she whispered, handing it to me. I unfolded it slowly. It was a bank transfer authorization, unsigned, naming me as the source of funds. The amount was staggering, enough to empty our joint savings and a significant portion of mine. My vision blurred. She was planning to take everything. Maya nodded, her voice barely audible. "And disappear." A cold, nauseating wave rolled through me. "But this isn't even the worst part," Maya whispered, her eyes filled with something more painful than fear. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. "Then what is?" She looked directly into my eyes, her voice cutting through the silence with devastating clarity. "She's done this before." Hearing Maya say, "She's done this before," should have prepared me for the avalanche that followed, but nothing could have braced me for the weight of what came next. The truth doesn't just arrive. It claws its way into your life, tearing apart whatever illusions you've wrapped yourself in for comfort. And once it settles, once the shock burns off, it leaves behind a hollow space where trust used to live. I felt that hollowness tightening in my chest as Maya explained that the burner phones weren't new. My wife always kept several at once, each tied to different people, different lives. That the documents weren't random. She used aliases whenever she needed to sever ties cleanly. That the man in the photo wasn't the first to be pulled into her orbit, but the next link in a chain I hadn't known existed. Every sentence Maya spoke stripped away another layer of the woman I thought I knew. The woman I married. The woman who had looked me in the eyes and promised honesty, fidelity, love. Whose eyes had she borrowed that day? I couldn't speak for a long time. When I finally set the stack of papers down, my hands felt numb, my pulse thudding in my fingertips. Maya watched me carefully, not with pity. She refused to pity me, but with a quiet readiness, like she was prepared to steady me if I collapsed, but respected me too much to assume I would. "How long?" I asked eventually, my voice dry. Maya hesitated. "Before you met her, and during." The room tilted. "During?" She doesn't believe in monogamy unless it benefits her, Maya said. But she does believe in opportunity, and she's always scanning for the next one, even when she's already in a relationship. Her gaze softened painfully. I wish I were exaggerating. All the late nights, all the excuses, all the sudden waves of distance, the coldness that never had a clear source, the practiced rejection whenever I reached for her. I wanted to believe Maya was wrong, or exaggerating out of overprotectiveness. But the evidence in the box was undeniable. These weren't assumptions. This was a blueprint of betrayal. Before I could respond, the sound of a car door shutting outside sliced through the silence. Maya's head snapped toward the hallway. She's home. The look she gave me wasn't fear. It was warning. I shoved everything back into the box, hastily locking it again and sliding it under the bed just as the front door opened. My heartbeat hammered so violently I felt it in my throat. My wife's footsteps were brisk and strangely upbeat, as if her night had given her whatever energy she had been withholding from me for weeks. She entered the room without knocking, dropping her purse on the bench and pulling off her earrings. "You're awake?" she said, surprised. "It's late." Late. She didn't even check the time anymore. Didn't care if her absence worried me or if her excuses made sense. "Where were you?" I asked, unable to keep the tremor out of my voice. She stiffened, not visibly enough for someone unfamiliar with her, but I felt the shift instantly. She laughed it off. "Out. I told you that. You didn't have dinner without me, did you?" Even now, her deflection was casual, effortless. She wasn't lying because she felt guilty. She was lying because she didn't think I had the courage to push back. She turned away to hang up her coat, and that's when it happened. She hummed a soft tune, completely relaxed. And halfway through placing her coat on the hook, she said something quietly, casually. "Mark would have loved that tonight." "Mark. My name is not Mark." I froze. Every muscle in my body locked into a single brutal moment of clarity. My wife stopped mid-sentence, shoulders tensing in a way that gave her away before she turned around. When she did, her eyes flickered with something sharp, calculating, startled, cold. "What did you say?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "I said you would have loved that," she replied smoothly, too smoothly. "You misheard." She wasn't panicking. She was correcting her story. My stomach twisted. "You called me Mark." "No, I didn't," she said, already brushing past me toward the closet. "You're tired. You've been stressed lately. Don't make a fight out of nothing." The ease with which she dismissed my reality twisted something in me more painfully than the slip of the name itself. This wasn't a misstep. It was exposure, a crack, a name belonging to another man, a man whose picture lay locked under our bed. She turned back toward me, her expression wiped clean, her tone softening into that practiced gentleness she used when she wanted to shut down a conversation without raising suspicion. "Come to bed, please. I'm exhausted and I don't want to deal with drama." Drama. I stared at her, truly seeing her for the first time. The charm she weaponized, the empathy she feigned, the softness she used as a shield. It all felt like a mask now, one she could slip on and off depending on what she needed from me. She slid into bed and turned her back to me within seconds, as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't said another man's name, as if the locked box wasn't full of burner phones and fake identities and financial papers that could ruin my life. I sat on the edge of the bed, unable to force myself to lie beside her. My thoughts spiraled, every instinct screaming that something was horribly, dangerously wrong. A whisper broke the silence. I turned. Maya stood in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes wide with urgency. "She's not just cheating," she murmured. "She's preparing to leave. With everything." She swallowed hard. "And she's planning to do it soon." I barely slept that night. Not because I was afraid my wife might come home late again or slip out before dawn. Not because the image of her calling me Mark kept replaying in my head like a broken recording. And not even because of the locked box full of evidence hiding beneath our bed like a coiled snake. What kept me awake were Maya's eyes in the doorway, wide, urgent, almost trembling, and the quiet intensity with which she said my wife was preparing to leave soon. She didn't just warn me. She sounded like someone who had been waiting for that moment to happen, or dreading it. Morning felt unreal. My wife acted as though the night had been perfectly normal. She asked if I wanted coffee, kissed my cheek lightly, too lightly, and hummed the same tune I'd heard her humming before she called me the wrong name. I watched her every movement like I was watching a stranger reenact my wife's mannerisms. She never noticed. Or maybe she did and didn't care. Maya stayed in her room most of the morning. When she finally emerged, she looked tired, guarded. Her expression tightened with something heavier than worry. She avoided my wife's eyes the entire time, and my wife didn't seem to notice that either, which only made the entire dynamic feel more staged, more rehearsed, more bizarre. I waited until my wife left the house, midday this time, no explanation, no reassurance, before approaching Maya. She was sitting at the kitchen table with a mug she wasn't drinking from, her fingers tapping nervously against the ceramic. When she saw me, she straightened, as though she had been expecting this conversation but not ready for it. "You said she's planning to leave soon," I told her quietly. "How do you know?" She hesitated, her gaze lowering to the mug. "Because she's done it before, several times. She always follows the same pattern: detachment, secrecy, burner phones, new identity paperwork. And then she disappears overnight, usually right after emptying bank accounts or selling assets tied to the relationship." I felt the blood drain from my face. "And you just watched it happen? With other people?" "I didn't know then," she said quickly, shaking her head. "The family didn't either. By the time we realized the pattern, it was too late for the others. But with you, I didn't want you to be another casualty." Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. "Then why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked. "Because you weren't ready to believe it," she whispered. "And because there were parts of this I wasn't ready to admit." Before I could respond, she pushed her chair back and stood, pacing slowly toward the living room. When she turned back to face me, her eyes held a storm I hadn't seen before. Not fear, not guilt. Something more complicated, something sharper. "There's something else you need to know," she said softly. "About me." I felt the shift instantly, the tension coiling tighter. This wasn't about my wife anymore. Not directly. "What is it?" I asked. She took a long breath. "When I came here, I didn't just come to observe her. I came to help her." My stomach dropped. "What?" Her eyes shimmered with regret. "I was supposed to assist her, cover for her, create distractions, keep you calm while she prepared what she needed." She brushed a hand across her forehead, as though the truth itself weighed too much. "We're sisters. No matter how messed up she is, part of me felt obligated to protect her." Anger surged in my chest, sharp and hot. "So all this time, you were helping her scam me?" Maya's reaction was immediate and pained. "At first," she said, voice quivering, "I didn't know how far she planned to go with you. I thought it would be something small, some financial gain, something she could walk away from without destroying your life. I didn't know she was planning to take everything." I stepped back, needing space, needing air. "And you expect me to believe you're on my side now?" "Yes," she said quickly, stepping forward but stopping herself before she got too close. "Because everything changed once I saw how she treated you. Once I saw what she actually planned. Once I realized what she was capable of doing to you." My voice was ice. "You're telling me none of this was personal? Not the whisper? Not your warnings? Not your feelings?" She closed her eyes, exhaling shakily. "That's the part I didn't expect. The part that ruined everything." When she opened her eyes again, there was no hiding the vulnerability there. "I fell for you. I didn't plan it. I didn't want to. I fought it for weeks. But watching her tear you down, watching you blame yourself, watching you try so hard to hold something together while she destroyed it behind your back, something changed in me. I stared at her, my emotions tangled and raw. Betrayal, confusion, disbelief, anger, sympathy. Everything crashed into each other, leaving me unsteady. "So what are you now?" I asked quietly. "A double agent?" "No," she said, her voice breaking. "I betrayed her. The moment I realized what she was doing, I switched sides. I chose you, and she doesn't know that yet." Her words weren't triumphant. They were desperate. She stepped closer, slowly, cautiously, as if afraid I'd pull away again. "I can't undo what I agreed to. I can't fix how this started, but I can stop her now. I can help you protect yourself." I swallowed hard. "Why?" Her eyes softened, filling with something so painfully sincere it rooted me in place. "Because I care about you," she whispered, "more than I should, and more than she ever did." The room felt suspended, the air thick enough to feel on my skin. I didn't move. I didn't speak. And Maya didn't reach for me. She knew better. She stood there with her heart exposed, waiting for me to either condemn her or allow her to stay. Finally, I found my voice. "So what do we do now?" Her shoulders relaxed, not in relief, but in grim acceptance. "Now," she said quietly, "we gather everything we can. We prepare, and when she makes her move—" Her eyes hardened with a determination that sent a chill through me. "We strike first." I never imagined I would be planning revenge against my own wife. Revenge felt like something people talked about in movies, something dramatic and distant, something belonging to the lives of reckless strangers, not to the quiet routines of my own home. But once the truth fully settled in, that the woman I loved had been preparing to drain my accounts, abandon me, and reinvent her life with another man, the idea of doing nothing felt like slow poison. Every hour, every breath, every glance toward the locked box reminded me of how thorough her plan had been. And every time I replayed the documents in my head, the forged signatures, the burner phones, the photo of the man she was seeing, something colder, sharper, steadier built inside me. Not rage, not despair, strategy. Maya sat across from me that evening, her hair pulled back, her expression composed with a seriousness I had only glimpsed in fragments. She'd shed the guilt, the hesitation, the emotional conflict. What remained was clarity, purpose. She had crossed a line the moment she revealed her secret, and now she was committed to seeing this through, no matter how painful the fallout might be, for me or for herself. "She's going to move soon," Maya said, spreading out her notes on the coffee table. "The last time she did this, she disappeared within a week of gathering her final documents, and judging by what we found, she's almost ready." A chill slid down my spine. "A week? Maybe less." Maya's fingers tapped anxiously against the edge of the table. "Once she thinks she's secured your financial access, she'll wait for the right moment to transfer everything. She always picks a time when the partner is distracted or away." I swallowed. "So we stop her before she gets the chance." Maya nodded. "We don't confront her outright. Not yet. If she thinks she's been exposed, she'll disappear instantly. You won't have time to protect your accounts." It struck me how deeply she understood her sister's patterns. That familiarity disturbed me more than I wanted to admit. "So what do we do first?" I asked. "Freeze the accounts she has access to," Maya said. "Change the passwords, remove her from the joint cards, and do it when she's out, so she can't see the notifications." I nodded slowly, the plan forming piece by piece like shards of glass fitting together. "And the evidence?" Maya glanced at the locked box. "Document everything, scan it, back it up, keep the originals safe. If she tries to accuse you of anything later, you'll need this trail." We spent the next hour preparing like two people planning a covert operation. Quiet, focused, methodical. I felt strangely numb through it all, as though my emotions had peeled themselves away for self-protection. Maya guided me, pushing me to take steps I would have never had the strength to take alone. She forced me to secure accounts, contact the bank, update my passwords, transfer essential funds into protected holdings she couldn't touch. Each action felt like reclaiming a part of myself she had tried to own. The house felt unnaturally silent when we paused. Maya studied me with a softness I wasn't used to seeing from her. "You're doing the right thing," she murmured, "even if it hurts now." "It doesn't hurt anymore," I admitted. "I think I've moved past that." "Good," she said, "because there's one more thing." Her tone told me I wouldn't like whatever came next. "What is it?" "You need to notify the other man." I blinked. "Why the hell would I do that?" "Because you're not the only one she's planning to take down," Maya said. "If she fails with you, she'll pivot to him, or she'll try to use him to cover her exit. You might hate the idea of protecting a stranger, but this is bigger than your marriage." I ran a hand through my hair. "You know how to contact him?" She nodded reluctantly. "I do, and I can do it myself if you prefer. But he deserves to know the truth before she destroys his life too." I didn't want to care about the man in the photo, but the thought of someone else walking blindly into the same trap made a bitter sense of responsibility settle over me. I nodded once, and Maya reached for her phone. The conversation she had with him was brief, calm, and devastating. I listened from across the room, unable to hear every word, but the tone told me enough. Shock, disbelief, a quiet, cracking resignation. When she hung up, she exhaled deeply, rubbing her forehead. "He knows now," she said. "He won't be helping her. That removes one of her escape routes." It didn't feel like victory. Not yet. We sat in silence for several minutes before Maya finally spoke again, this time more quietly, more intimately. "Tomorrow. Tomorrow we confront her." I felt my chest tighten. "Together?" "Yes," she said. "You shouldn't face her alone, and she won't be able to manipulate the situation if I'm there." I studied her face, calm yet tense, determined yet afraid. She wasn't immune to what this would cost her. She was preparing to burn the last tie she had to her sister, and she wasn't doing it for the family. She was doing it for me. That realization shifted something inside me in a way I wasn't prepared for. I stood, walking toward the window, staring out at the dark shape of the driveway, the streetlights casting thin lines across the pavement. "What do you think she'll do?" I asked quietly. "When she realizes everything is collapsing?" Maya's answer came without hesitation. "She'll fight," she said. "She'll deny. She'll manipulate. She'll turn it all on you. She might even try to make me the villain, or claim we planned this together." "And what should I do when she does?" Maya stepped beside me, close enough that I felt her presence without her touching me, close enough that her voice warmed the air between us. "Tell the truth," she said softly, "and stay steady. She can only win if you lose control." I nodded slowly. Tomorrow would be the day it all shattered. Tomorrow, the woman I loved would face the truth she'd built her life to avoid. And tomorrow, Maya and I would stand side by side, not as co-conspirators, not as forbidden chemistry, not as tangled emotions, but as two people united against the same storm, the storm she had created. And this time, we would finally strike first. The confrontation didn't feel like the explosive scene I had imagined. It wasn't loud or violent or chaotic. It was quiet, eerily quiet, the kind of stillness that happens right before a storm breaks open the sky. My wife came home early the next afternoon, humming the same soft tune she always used to mask her thoughts, her purse swinging at her side, her smile prepared like an accessory. She didn't notice that the energy in the house had shifted, or maybe she did, but assumed she could manipulate it like she always did. When she saw Maya and me standing together in the living room, she blinked once, surprised, but not afraid. That told me everything about her confidence. She still believed she was in control. "What's going on?" she asked lightly, shrugging off her coat. "You both look like you're about to stage an intervention." Maya stepped forward first. She didn't raise her voice, didn't accuse. She simply placed the locked box on the table. My wife's entire posture changed in an instant. Her smile twitched. Her eyes narrowed. Her breath stilled for a fraction of a second before she forced a laugh. "You went through my things?" she said. "Seriously? Are we doing this now?" "We're doing this because you plan to disappear," Maya said evenly. "With his money. With a new identity. Just like last time." My wife's gaze snapped to me, not in guilt, not in remorse, but calculation. She studied my face, scanning for weakness, for fear, for hesitation she could use. When she found none, her jaw tightened. "This is ridiculous," she said. "Whatever she told you, she's lying. She's always been jealous of me, you know that. She's trying to make you think—" "She called me Mark last night," I interrupted. The color drained from her face. For the first time, she faltered. I opened the box and pulled out the documents, the prepaid phones, the photograph of the man she'd been seeing. Each item landed on the table like a final nail in the coffin of our marriage. She watched silently, her expression hardening, shifting from panic to composure, to something cold and unrecognizable. Finally, she spoke. "You shouldn't have gone through my things," she said softly. "Not, 'I'm sorry.' Not, 'let me explain.' Not even, 'it's not what you think.' Only control, only irritation that her plan had been interrupted." "What were you planning to do?" I asked. "Leave in the middle of the night? Empty the accounts? Start a new life with him?" She held my gaze without blinking. "I was planning to start a life without you. That's all you need to know." The bluntness hit harder than anything Maya had revealed. Maya stepped closer, anger visible in the tightness around her eyes. "You were going to ruin him," she said softly, "just like you did with the others." My wife turned toward her, lips curling slightly. "Oh, please. You act like you're some hero. You knew exactly what I was doing when you agreed to help. Don't pretend you were innocent." The air cracked. Maya didn't flinch. "I changed," she said. "The moment I saw what you were doing to him, I changed." My wife laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "You changed because you fell for him." Silence. Heavy. Exposed. Maya's eyes flicked to mine, but only for a moment. She didn't deny it. My wife stepped closer to me then, her expression suddenly softening in a way I recognized too well. The mask she wore in the early days of our relationship. "Look," she murmured, "she's manipulating you. You know I love you. You know I wouldn't hurt you. You're overreacting." I didn't move, didn't speak. She reached for my hand. I pulled away. Something in her face snapped then. Not dramatically, but with a quiet, shattering realization that her influence over me had finally broken. She straightened slowly, the gentleness fading from her features, replaced by something hollow. "So, that's it?" she whispered. "You choose her?" "I choose myself," I said. "Something you never did." For a moment, she just stared at me. And then, with the same cold efficiency she had used to reject me night after night, she turned, gathered her things, and walked out the door without looking back. She didn't fight. She didn't plead. She simply left, as if she had already rehearsed her exit. Maybe she had. The house fell into a surreal quiet afterward. I didn't speak. Maya didn't move. For several minutes, we simply existed in the aftermath, both aware of the cost, both aware of the finality of what had just happened. Finally, Maya stepped toward me, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry," she said, "for everything, for how it started, for what I kept from you." I looked at her, really looked, at the guilt, the sincerity, the complicated mixture of courage and regret. "I don't know what happens next," I admitted. "That's okay," she said softly. "You don't have to decide anything now." She turned to leave the room, giving me space but paused in the doorway. Her voice trembled, just enough that I felt it. "There's one more thing I never told you," she said. "Something I've been holding on to since the night I whispered to you." She looked over her shoulder, her eyes meeting mine with a quiet vulnerability I hadn't seen in her before. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I didn't plan it. But I fell for you the moment I said, 'So I'm not.'" A long, painful silence stretched between us. She didn't wait for an answer. She didn't ask for anything. She simply walked down the hallway and disappeared into her room. I stood there alone, surrounded by the ruins of a life I thought I understood, uncertain of where things would go, but painfully aware of one truth. Some endings don't give you closure. They give you clarity. And clarity, however brutal, is still a beginning.